name's Tori. I've been sober for 17 months, so almost a year and a half now. My drug of choice was opiates. I started out with painkillers and eventually moved on to heroin. So I was an IV heroin user for about a year, 2 years. Well, the first time I went to rehab, I mostly decided to get help because I didn't really have any other options at that time. But the time that I actually got sober, I was pregnant. I found out in my second rehab that I was 3 months pregnant. And I didn't get sober at that point, but a couple months later I decided that I really needed to get sober before I had this baby. So I went to my last rehab when I was 5 months pregnant, and I stayed there for about a month, and then I did outpatient with cycles for about 6 weeks, and I stayed sober throughout the rest of my pregnancy and until my son was a couple months old. I did have a short relapse, but I've basically been sober ever since then. So my experience with cycles was always very positive. I loved the facility, and my personal experience when I went to outpatient was amazing. The different activities and the different lessons that we did at outpatient really helped me get comfortable with my sobriety and feel like I was actually going to be able to stay sober this time. I still am in contact with them even almost a year and a half later, so I would say it was very positive. Personally, I think the 12 steps is probably the most important part of recovery for me personally. I didn't know anything about the 12 steps until I came to cycles the first time. The first couple times that I tried to get sober, I didn't do the 12 steps and I didn't stay sober. I relapsed every single time. It wasn't until I actually worked the steps and, really read the book and tried to kind of change my life with the 12 steps that I actually was able to stay sober and was able to completely transform my life. I think that without the 12 steps, you might be staying dry or sober for a little while, but I don't think that you're really transforming yourself until you actually work those steps and you look at yourself and you look at why you did these things. And I think the 12 steps really help you do that. They help you look at why you did the things that you did and what made you the person that you became. If I hadn't gone to Cycles of Change, even though I didn't stay sober the very first time I came, I don't think I would have gotten sober at such a young age. I was only 20 when I got sober for good, and I don't think that I would have gotten sober this soon. I don't know if I ever would have made it back, because even though I didn't stay sober that very first time, I heard some things while I was there that have stuck with me today, 3 years later. I still remember some of the things that some of the counselors told me during those very first few days. Because when you're in that very vulnerable position, even if you're not completely at your rock bottom and you're not completely ready, you might hear something that changes your life 3 years later. If I hadn't ever come to Cycles, I don't think that I would have ever done the 12 steps. I don't think I would have gotten as into AA as I am. AA is a huge part of my life today, and I go to meetings all the time. I have commitments, I do panels. I don't think that I would do all of those things if I hadn't been taught how important they are to your recovery. They wanted me to get sober, and I could tell that they really did care what happened to me. And everyone that I've known that has gone through there has felt the same way. What I'd like to say to somebody that needs help but isn't quite sure they're ready is that, I was definitely in that position for years. I spent 3 years thinking I might be ready but not really being ready to commit 100% to recovery. And even if you're not 100% ready, I would say just try it anyway. Give yourself a year. What is a year to stay sober? And just give yourself a chance, because if you don't, you never know that when you are sure you're ready, you don't know if you'll still be here.